Jennifer Love Hewitt's story is not just about fame, red carpets, and Hollywood success. It is about resilience, reinvention, quiet strength, and the courage to grow in front of the entire world while critics watch your every move. Because when we talk about Jennifer Love Hewitt, we are talking about a girl who stepped into the spotlight before she even understood what pressure meant. A small-town dreamer born in Texas who believed in music, performance, and storytelling long before the world believed in her, and from the very beginning there was something magnetic about her presence, something warm, something approachable, something that made audiences feel like she was not just a celebrity but someone they could relate to, someone who laughed like them, loved like them, hurt like them, and that relatability became her superpower in an industry that often rewards distance over authenticity. Because while many actors build walls to survive Hollywood, Jennifer Love Hewitt built bridges, and those bridges connected her to millions of fans who grew up watching her evolve from a child performer into a global star, especially when she stepped into the cultural phenomenon that was Party of Five, where her role as Sarah Reeves showed the world that she could bring depth, vulnerability, and emotional realism to television, and suddenly she wasn't just another young actress trying to make it. She was a voice for teenagers navigating heartbreak, identity, and growing pains. And as the 90s rolled forward, her fame exploded even further when she became the face of one of the most iconic teen horror films of that decade, I Know What You Did Last Summer. A movie that cemented her as a scream queen while also proving that she could carry the emotional weight of fear, trauma, and survival on screen, and in an era where young actresses were often boxed into one-dimensional roles, Jennifer brought sincerity and emotional intensity that made audiences invest in her characters deeply. But what makes her journey truly inspiring is not just the success, it is how she handled the criticism that followed, because fame at a young age comes with scrutiny. Especially for women in Hollywood, where appearance is judged more harshly than talent, and Jennifer faced that pressure publicly, being dissected by tabloids, criticized for her body, her relationships, her career choices, yet instead of shrinking under that weight, she continued to work, to create, to perform, to prove that longevity is built on persistence rather than perfection. And when she later took on the hauntingly emotional role in Ghost Whisperer, she showed the world a more mature version of herself, one capable of carrying an entire series with grace, empathy, and emotional depth, portraying a woman who communicates with spirits not as a gimmick but as a metaphor for unresolved grief and the human need for closure, and through that show she connected to audiences on a spiritual and emotional level, reinforcing the idea that her strength as an actress lies in her ability to make extraordinary circumstances feel deeply human, and beyond the screen. Jennifer Love Hewitt has constantly reinvented herself, moving between acting, singing, directing, and even writing, refusing to be limited by one label, and in a world obsessed with overnight success stories, her career teaches a more powerful lesson, that true success is not about explosive fame that burns out quickly but about adaptability, resilience, and the willingness to grow through every phase of life. And as she transitioned into adulthood, marriage, and motherhood, what makes Jennifer Love Hewitt's journey even more powerful is the emotional intelligence she brings not only to her characters but to her life choices, because in an industry that often pressures women to chase youth, perfection, and constant reinvention for external validation, she chose authenticity over illusion, embracing aging naturally, speaking openly about body image struggles, and challenging unrealistic beauty standards in a way that resonated deeply with fans who had grown up alongside her, and that honesty transformed her from a teen idol into something far more meaningful, a symbol of self-acceptance in a world addicted to comparison. And when conversations about body shaming intensified online, Jennifer did not respond with anger or retreat into silence but instead with dignity, reminding people that confidence does not come from fitting into someone else's expectations but from owning your journey unapologetically, and that message alone elevated her influence beyond entertainment, turning her story into motivation for anyone who has ever felt scrutinized, judged, or misunderstood, because she represents the reality that growth includes phases of doubt, reinvention includes vulnerability, and strength includes softness. And as she continued her work in television, particularly in high-intensity drama spaces, she demonstrated a balance between emotional storytelling and commanding screen presence that only experience can refine. And through every comeback, every new role, and every life transition, she has quietly rewritten the narrative that child stars fade away, proving instead that evolution is possible when you remain grounded in who you are rather than who the industry wants you to be, and that grounded nature traces back to her early beginnings in Texas, where her passion for performance started not from a desire for fame but from a love of music and storytelling. And that pure beginning is what has always separated her from others who were manufactured for stardom, because authenticity cannot be trained, it must be lived, and Jennifer Love Hewitt has lived her evolution publicly, imperfectly, courageously, and consistently, and when you examine her career from a strategic perspective, it is also a masterclass in longevity, because she moved intelligently between film and television, between mainstream popularity and emotionally complex roles, maintaining relevance across decades in an industry that constantly replaces yesterday's stars with today's trending names, and her ability to connect emotionally with audiences remains her strongest asset, as viewers do not just watch her characters, they feel with them, they heal with them, they remember growing up with them, and that emotional imprint is what creates timeless careers, not viral moments. And beyond acting, her work as a director and producer demonstrates creative depth that often goes unnoticed in mainstream discussions, proving that her talent extends far beyond what appears on screen. And as social media transformed celebrity culture, Jennifer adapted again, sharing glimpses of her life in ways that felt warm rather than curated, real rather than performative, reinforcing the same authenticity that defined her early career. And that adaptability highlights a critical lesson in personal growth, that reinvention is not about changing who you are but about revealing different layers of yourself over time, and Jennifer Love Hewitt embodies that philosophy fully, because she has allowed the world to see her as a teenager, as a horror icon, as a dramatic lead, as a wife, as a mother, as a woman redefining beauty on her own terms, and through every version she has maintained one constant trait, emotional sincerity, and in a digital era driven by filters and facades, sincerity feels revolutionary, and that is why her story continues to inspire. There is something deeply powerful about watching someone grow up in front of the world and still remain grounded, and Jennifer Love Hewitt's continued evolution proves that longevity is not an accident but a conscious decision made again and again behind closed doors, far from cameras and flashing lights, because while the audience only sees the premieres and performances, the real transformation happens in the quiet moments when an artist decides whether to keep going, whether to redefine themselves, whether to stand firm in their identity despite public pressure, and Jennifer has done exactly that, choosing depth over drama and stability over spectacle, which is rare in an industry fueled by headlines and controversy. And as the years progressed and Hollywood shifted dramatically with streaming platforms, social media culture, and changing audience expectations, she did not attempt to chase trends or reinvent herself in ways that felt forced. Instead she leaned into emotional maturity, selecting roles that reflected growth and complexity, especially in 911 where her portrayal of Maddie Buckley brought layered storytelling to primetime television, exploring themes of trauma, healing, motherhood, resilience, and emotional survival with a realism that resonated far beyond entertainment. And this phase of her career demonstrated something critical. That experience enhances performance, that life lived deeply creates art that feels authentic, and audiences responded. Not because she was once a 90s icon, but because she remained emotionally present in her craft, and beyond the screen, Jennifer Love Hewitt embraced family life with intentional devotion, proving that success is not measured only by professional milestones but by personal fulfillment, and in interviews and public appearances she radiates a different kind of confidence than the young starlet of the late 90s, a confidence rooted not in validation but in self-awareness. And in a culture that often pressures women in Hollywood to fight aging or hide change, she has chosen openness, speaking candidly about beauty standards and self-acceptance, reminding fans that growth should be celebrated rather than feared, and that courage to appear real in a filtered world adds to her legacy in ways awards cannot measure, because influence is not just about the roles you play but the example you set. And Jennifer Love Hewitt has quietly modeled resilience through transitions that could have derailed others, navigating shifts in popularity, changes in industry dynamics, personal milestones, and public scrutiny without allowing any single chapter to define her permanently. And this ability to separate self-worth from public opinion is perhaps her greatest achievement, because many performers struggle when early fame fades or transforms. Yet Jennifer used each transition as an opportunity rather than a setback, stepping into new spaces with grace and humility. And when people reflect on her journey from Party of Five to I Know What You Did Last Summer to Ghost Whisperer and beyond, what becomes clear is that she never relied on one identity to sustain her career. She diversified her talent, strengthened her emotional range, and remained adaptable without losing authenticity, and that adaptability is a blueprint for anyone pursuing long-term success in any field. Because industries evolve, audiences change, platforms shift, but authenticity, anchored in passion, remains timeless. And as younger generations discover her earlier work through streaming and social media clips, they encounter not just nostalgia but a genuine performer whose emotional transparency feels refreshing even decades later, and that rediscovery reinforces the truth that real talent does not expire, it waits to be appreciated by new eyes. And Jennifer Love Hewitt's journey stands as proof that fame achieved early does not have to define your entire narrative.